Okay, let's unpack this. Think back to 2005.
Right, the early 2000s.
Yeah, a time when a certain network was known almost exclusively for SpongeBob SquarePants.
Mostly kids' comedy, yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
and out of nowhere, they greenlit a cartoon about, kids throwing magic rocks at each other.
Which sounds like standard Saturday morning fare on paper.
Right. But by the time it ended a few years later, it had quietly pulled off this ultimate Trojan horse.
Oh, without it.
It completely dismantled every toxic stereotype about what it means to be a man. It delivered one of the most mature, nuanced treatises on growing up, identity, and inherited trauma ever broadcast on television.
And it really is wild when you frame it that way.
It is. And today, our mission on this deep dive is to explore a really brilliant analysis by the YouTube channel May.
A fantastic breakdown, by the way.
Oh, incredible. The video breaks down exactly how Avatar: The Last Airbender masterfully deconstructs and redefines the entire concept of masculinity.
And I think it's a phenomenal piece of source material for us to dissect, especially for you, the listener, navigating an era of, honestly, absolute information overload.
Oh, for sure. It feels like we're constantly bombarded.
We are. We're hit with these really rigid societal expectations every day. Loud, binary voices telling us exactly what roles we are supposed to play.
Like what strength is supposed to look like.
Exactly what strength looks like, what success demands. So taking a step back and analyzing how a supposed children's show tackled the heavy, complex concept of manhood, well, it offers some incredibly potent real-world
lessons about breaking free from those expected roles.
Precisely.
But before we can even touch the character arcs, we really need to understand the absolute hostility of the environment this show was born into.
Oh, the television landscape back then was different.
Right. The landscape of the early 2000s, specifically in network animation, was aggressively opposed to the kind of story series creators Michael and Brian wanted to tell.
They were fighting an uphill battle from day one.
They really were. They weren't just fighting the standard creative battles, They were fighting an entire business model built on syndication.
Yeah, the prevailing philosophy at networks back then was all about repeatable content.
What do you mean by repeatable exactly?
Well, shows were mathematically engineered for casual viewing. The executives wanted a product where a viewer could be, flipping channels on a random Tuesday.
Right.
And they drop into episode 47, and they need to understand the entire dynamic within 30 seconds.
So no deep lore or ongoing plot.
Exactly. To achieve that, you need one-dimensional characters who are basically trapped in amber.
Trapped in amber, I like that.
Yeah, because if a character learns a profound lesson about teamwork in episode 5, the structural mandate dictated that they must conveniently forget that lesson by episode 6.
Which is so frustrating.
It is, but it ensured the writers could recycle the exact same conflict again later. The status quo was king, and change was seen as a massive liability.
But Michael and Brian walked into that environment and they completely rejected the model.
They did. They pitched a finite story.
Which was unheard of.
Yeah.
They didn't want a never-ending lucrative franchise where the heroes stayed 10 years old for 3 decades.
Right, like The Simpsons.
Exactly. They demanded a narrative with a definitive, unchangeable beginning and a definitive, permanent end.
And the psychology behind that structural choice is really what elevates the entire...
How so?
Well, for a story to have actual weight, for the characters to genuinely feel the heaviness of the world they inhabit and the consequences of their actions, the story has to be brave enough.
Oh, wow. Brave enough to go away. That's powerful.
It is. A show designed to mature alongside its audience means its themes must also grow heavier, more complex, and significantly more dangerous over time.
Because the characters were actually aging and learning.
Exactly. By insisting on a finite structure, the creators ensured that every mistake a character made left a permanent psychological scar.
And every victory extracted a real cost.
Right. The characters couldn't just hit the reset button at the end of the 20.
Which brings up a really interesting question. Why is it that so many creators, and honestly, so many of us in our own lives, are terrified of letting things end?
It's a fundamental human fear, I think.
It really is. It's like being at an incredible party where the conversation is deep and the energy is just perfect.
I know exactly the kind of party.
Right. But instead of leaving at midnight when the memory would be pristine, people refuse to leave until the sun comes up.
Yeah, the lights flick on.
The lights flick on, the magic evaporates, and you're just left standing in a room full of trash. We seem fundamentally opposed to finite chapters.
We cling to repeatable content in our media for the exact same reason we cling to repeatable days in our own lives.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
A repeatable day is safe. You know the parameter. Even if you are miserable in a job or a relationship, well, the misery is familiar.
It's a known quantity.
Exactly. Allowing a chapter to definitively end forces you to step into the unknown. And more terrifyingly, it requires you to confront your own flaws without the safety net of routine.
Wow.
And the creators force their characters to step out of that safety net, which created a perfect mirror for the terrifying, non-linear experience of coming of age.
And that terrifying confrontation with your own flaws is really the bedrock of arguably the greatest redemption arc in the history of animation.
We are, of course, talking about Zuko.
We absolutely are. We cannot talk about dismantling toxic expectations without breaking down Zuko.
He is the poster child for this conversation.
For sure. In Book 1, he is introduced as this hyper-rigid, ruthless, constantly angry teenager who is completely obsessed with his honor.
Right. He screams about his honor constantly.
Constantly. He fights for his honor. He obsesses over regaining it. But the Mazerme analysis points out a vital linguistic trick here.
Which is brilliant, by the way.
It really is. The video argues that honor is just a socially acceptable placeholder word for his abuser's approval.
Yeah, it is a shield he uses to hide his desperate need for his father's value.
Which is so heartbreaking. Realize it.
It is. If we look closely at the psychology of Zuko's early state, he's performing a highly aggressive, deeply false version of masculinity that simply does not belong to him.
He's playing a part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He operates under the tragic delusion that masculinity and worth are defined entirely by dominance, victory, and the subjugation of his enemies.
Because that's all he's ever been taught.
Right. He believes that if he can just win the big fight and capture the Avatar, his father will finally deem him worthy of love. He has completely internalized the toxic standards of the man who burned.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Watching Book 1 Zuko is like watching a kid trying to sprint a marathon while wearing an oversized, incredibly heavy suit of armor.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah, an armor that was custom tailored for a much larger, much crueler man.
Right. It doesn't fit him at all.
Not even a little bit. He puts on this ruthless persona because it looks intimidating to the outside world. It projects the image of a traditional conqueror.
But inside that armor, he is suffocating.
Completely suffocating. It is restricting his every natural movement, weighing down his conscience, and just exhausting him.
He is burning massive amounts of psychological energy just trying to keep the armor from falling off.
Exactly. Just trying to hide the terrified, vulnerable kid underneath.
And that level of psychological exhaustion is completely unsustainable. You can't live like that forever.
No, you really can't.
What is brilliant about the narrative mechanics of his change is that it isn't triggered by a sudden magical epiphany.
Right. He doesn't just wake up one day and say, oh, I'm good now.
Exactly. The shift is forced upon him through sheer isolation. In Book 2, he is stripped of his royal title, his military resources, and eventually physically separated from his uncle.
And that separation creates massive structural cracks in that oversized armor.
Because the external noise finally stopped. Take away the soldiers saluting him and the constant forward momentum of the ship, and what is he left?
He is left alone with himself.
Yes. For the first time in his life, the rigid military structure that dictated his every waking moment is gone.
And he is forced to ask not just what he is doing, but why he is doing it.
Exactly. Without an enemy to chase or a father to impress, the internal silence becomes deaf.
It's terrifying.
He has to confront the reality that he doesn't actually know who he is without his anger.
And the show does something so rare here by communicating this massive internal shift visually.
Yes, the visual storytelling is top tier.
The video highlights how Zuko's changing appearance throughout the series isn't just, a merchandising trick to sell more action figures.
Yeah, it's not just for a new toy line.
It acts as a literal geographical roadmap for his shifting identity.
Every time he cuts his hair.
Every time. Every time he cuts his hair, every time he adopts Earth Kingdom clothing or changes his fighting stance, he is defining a new chapter.
He is trying on different versions of himself.
Exactly. Searching for an identity that actually fits now that the heavy armor is cracked open.
But as profound as that search, the element that makes Zuko's journey resonate so deeply with adult audiences is the brutal reality of his relapse.
Relapse is so hard.
It is, because healing is never a clean upward trajectory, and the writers refuse to give him an easy out.
They really make him earn it.
We see the sheer destructiveness of his flaws early on when he burned.
Right, actively terrorizing innocent people to chase this phantom honor.
But the true heartbreak comes later, after he has made genuine progress.
Right. In Book 2, he actually achieves a level of peace. He builds a quiet, anonymous life with his uncle in the Earth.
He's working in a tea shop. He's actually...
Yeah, you start to think he's finally free of his father's shadow. And then, the moment the pressure is dialed back up, the moment a shortcut to his old life is dangled in front.
He throws all of that hard-won peace away.
He throws it all away. He participates in the betrayal of his uncle alongside his sister, Azula.
And that betrayal is one of the most painfully human moments ever committed to television.
It really is.
When faced with the terrifying, unmapped prospect of true independence and systemic change, Zuko panics.
He gets scared.
He retreats to the familiar, structured comfort of his father's toxic.
Because it's what he knows.
It demonstrates how incredibly difficult it is to break inherited cycles of behavior. He had the opportunity to be good, to embrace a new identity, and he chose the familiar poison instead.
Which is devastating.
It is, but that relapse is what makes his ultimate redemption feel so incredibly earned.
But the relapse is the necessary catalyst for the final breakthrough. I mean, he had to get exactly what he thought he wanted.
He'd had to sit on the throne, basically.
Yeah, the royal welcome, his father's praise, the restoration of his so-called honor. He had to get it to realize how incredibly hollow the prize actually was.
The illusion only shatters when he finally holds it in his hands.
Exactly. Which leads directly to the confrontation that defines his entire arc.
The day of the eclipse.
Yes. When he finally faces his father, he strips away the linguistic shield of honor and states the raw truth. He says, for so long, all I wanted was for you to love, to accept me. I thought it was my honor that I wanted, but really, I was just trying to please you, my father.
He identifies the core trauma and immediately disempowers it.
Right. By saying it out loud, he separates his intrinsic self-worth from the expectations of his abuser.
He finally articulates that his father's version of power, a masculinity built entirely on fear, dominance, and the subjugation of others, is a complete lie.
It's all smoke and mirrors.
It is a fragile facade that requires constant violence to maintain. And in that moment, Zuko steps out of the armor for good.
But let's look at the systemic reality of that breakthrough. Because Zuko could never have recognized the toxicity of his father's power if he hadn't been intimately exposed to a completely different model of manhood.
That's a crucial point.
Right. If a ruthless, burning conqueror is the only example of a man you have ever seen, you don't have the vocabulary to imagine an alternative.
You don't know that another way exists.
Exactly. The alternative blueprint had to be modeled for him every single day by his uncle, Iroh.
Uncle Iroh is the emotional gravity of the entire
He really is the heart of the show.
He represents a masculinity completely antithetical to the standards of the world he inhabited. The Maozame video expertly points out how Iroh's model is rooted entirely in patience, profound compassion, and relentless self-reflection.
And the creators use Iroh to brilliantly deconstruct the standard warrior trope.
Oh, completely.
I mean, think about the cultural landscape of action media, especially back then.
Yeah.
The ultimate warrior is almost universally depicted as stoic, bloodthirsty, completely detached from soft emotions, and focused only on the mission.
Like a Terminator.
Exactly. But Iroh passionately brews tea. He stops his journey to play music.
He sings songs.
He risks his own safety to admire and purchase rare flowers.
And those are traits that almost any other piece of media would immediately code as a weakness.
Or at best, use as a comedic punchline to show how far past his prime he is.
Right, like the goofy old man trope. Yet, the narrative framing constantly reinforces that Iroh is arguably the most dangerous, capable man alive.
And we have to look at the mechanics of why he is peaceful. He isn't some monk who grew up meditating on a mountain, completely sheltered from the horrors of the world.
Far from it.
His peacefulness isn't born from ignorance or a lack of capability.
No, it is born from survival. Iroh was a legendary general.
The Dragon of the West.
Exactly. He chased the exact same toxic power his brother. He conquered cities, he led armies, and he paid the ultimate horrific price by losing his son in the process.
Which changes everything for her.
He has seen the absolute bottom of the abyss that true power requires you to stare in. His gentleness is not a lack of edge. It is the ultimate grueling exercise of restraint.
He has entirely conquered his own. When you possess the raw, destructive capability to literally burn the world down, choosing to sit in the dirt and make a cup of tea instead is the most profound display of power imaginable.
It's power under control.
But it makes you wonder, does that level of wisdom require total devastation?
That's the million-dollar question.
Like, is Iroh's restraint only possible because he already reached the peak of power and hit rock bottom? Can a person learn to appreciate the flowers without having to burn down their own metaphorical Koshi Island fur?
And the show addresses that philosophical dilemma directly through his mentorship of Zuko.
How does it do that?
Well, Iroh is desperately trying to impart his agonizingly earned wisdom so that Zuko does not have to pay the same catastrophic price.
He's trying to save him from that abyss.
Exactly. Iroh does not want his nephew to be a better conqueror or a more efficient prince. He states explicitly that he wants Zuko to be a whole person.
A whole person, not a weapon forged by the state.
Right. Iroh redefines the apex of masculine strength for the audience. The ultimate measure of a man is not the ability to lay siege to a city, an act Iroh himself perpetrated.
Right.
True strength is the immense, quiet, excruciating courage it takes to look at your past atrocities, to forgive yourself, and to actively choose to build something beautiful instead of destroying something else tomorrow.
Man, Iroh's wisdom feels like the heavy-weathered realization of someone who once held the power of gods in his hand.
It carries so much weight.
It does. But what happens when you strip all that power away?
That's a very different scenario.
It's one thing to choose peace when you can breathe fire. It's an entirely different calculation when you are the weakest person in the room and the world is demanding that you protect it.
Which brings us to Sokka.
Exactly. That brings us to the average guy of the group. Sokka doesn't have the luxury of Iroh's power.
And Sokka's evolution is an incredibly vital piece of this puzzle.
Why is that?
Because he acts as the proxy for the average. He exists in a world of superhumans, possessing absolutely no magical ability, yet he feels the exact same societal pressure for masculinity.
He really does. And he starts the series as a genuinely tough hang.
He can be very grating in those early episodes.
Very. The analysis rightly points out that Earl Sokka is deeply sexist, endlessly annoying, and completely full of this unearned, loud bravado.
He acts like the ultimate warrior.
But he possesses almost zero actual martial skills to back up his posture.
But when you look at the sociological environment he was raised in, his behavior is a textbook trauma response.
Okay, unpack that.
Sokka was left behind as the oldest male in his tribe when every adult man sailed off to fight a global war.
Right, he's just a little kid.
He was a child forced to fill adult shoes. He adopts the title of protector of his village, but because he has no mentors to teach him what protection actually requires, he leans into a severely flawed, cartoonish logic.
He operates on the panicked assumption that being a man means you must automatically be the strongest, most physically dominant object in the room.
And if he isn't the strongest, he is failing.
Which is the core trap of toxic masculinity in our own world, right?
Oh, absolutely.
He masks his deep-seated, terrifying inadequacy with aggressive, loud confidence. He operates under the assumption that if he puffs his chest out far enough, and if he belittles the capabilities of the women around him,
like his sister, constantly.
Yes, like his sister, then no one will notice that he is completely out of his depth and terrified of failing his people.
But the narrative brilliance is that the show doesn't let him maintain that.
Thank goodness it doesn't.
It orchestrates an encounter that physically and philosophically shatters his worldview. He meets the Kyoshi warriors.
Oh, I love the Kyoshi warriors.
Right. An elite faction of highly disciplined, highly trained female fighters. And we need to look at exactly how they beat him, because it's not just a physical beatdown.
It's very intentional.
The mechanics of the fight are deeply symbolic. Sokka charges in with a massive, heavy swing, all brute force, zero restraint, completely unbalanced by his own blind confidence.
And they don't even break a sweat.
They don't. The Kyoshi warriors do not meet his strike with a harder strike. They use a martial arts style that redirects their opponent's momentum.
They just step aside.
They step aside, guide his own frantic energy past them, and let his rigid aggression plant him face first into the dirt.
It perfectly mirrors the psychological lesson here.
How so?
Well, trying to be the hardest, loudest, most aggressive object in the room doesn't make you strong.
Right.
It makes you brittle, unbalanced, and incredibly easy to topple. It's like a guy who insists on fixing a delicate, complex car engine by wildly swinging a massive sledgehammer.
Just making a ton of noise.
Exactly, making a ton of noise, acting like the manliest mechanic on earth, until actual professionals walk in, take his hammer away, and show him that fixing the engine requires a delicate wrench and the humility to read the instruction manual.
And a bruised ego in that situation often leads to doubling down.
Which Sokka could have.
He could have. But Sokka's true strength, the moment his actual journey to manhood begins, is his reaction to the humiliation.
He doesn't throw a tantrum.
No, he doesn't storm off to preserve his fragile pride. He gets on his knees, he bows to the women who just humiliated him. He openly admits he was completely wrong, and he begs them to teach him.
He asks for the wrench.
He asks for the wrench.
That humility completely redefines his entire trajectory. I mean, in a universe populated by teenagers who can casually conjure lightning from their fingertips or shatter mountains with a thought, Sokka has to accept a difficult truth.
That he is just a guy.
He's just a guy. He is never, ever going to win a contest of raw, destructive power. He cannot punch his way to victory, so he has to carve what the analysis calls a third path.
He fundamentally redefines strength as utility.
Yes.
He realizes that his mind, his ability to strategize, and his capacity for creative problem solving are infinitely more valuable to the group than his ability to swing a club.
And by book 3, the transformation is total. He isn't the guy desperately trying to land the final blow in a fight anymore.
He's the planner.
He has evolved into the architect of the victory. He is coordinating massive, multinational invasion plans, handling troop logistics, and reading maps to ensure that the superhumans around him actually have a finish line to cross.
He learned he wasn't the strongest, and in doing so, he found a profoundly more essential way to be valuable.
He found his authentic utility by letting go of the expectation of physical dominance. But the narrative masterstroke of the series is how it flips that exact premise on its head for its protagonist.
Right. Aang's journey is the inverse.
Completely.
Yeah.
If Sokka's struggle is finding his worth without power, Aang's struggle is maintaining his soul when he possesses all of it.
Which is a terrifying burden.
It is. What happens when you are undeniably the most powerful entity on the planet and literally every voice around you is demanding that you use that godlike strength for violence?
Because Aang is the avatar. He can master all 4 elements. By the sheer definition of the lore, he is the apex predator.
The most powerful being alive.
Yet, as the source points out, his character is a direct, deliberate dismantling of the traditional action hero arc.
Because usually in these grand epics, the strongest man is the one who leaves the biggest crater.
Exact. The hero proves his ultimate masculinity by inflicting the most devastating damage on the villain.
But Orang's entire philosophy actively rejects that premise.
It is built on the tenets of his culture's airbending, which prioritize avoidance, fluid movement, and absolute freedom.
He refuses to meet force with force.
Right. He is not about hitting the obstacle. He is about moving around it.
He carries a deep, profound, and intentional softness into a world that is violently demanding he harden his heart.
And the show constantly tests the limits of that softness.
They really push him to the edge.
It doesn't make his pacifism easy.
No, it doesn't. By the time we reach book 3, the pressure on Aang is suffocating. It isn't just the Fire Lord trying to kill him.
It's his allies, too.
It's his closest friends, his military allies, and even the spirits of his own past life. The previous avatars who possess all the wisdom of history are looking him dead in the eye and saying, to end the 100-year war, you must execute the Fire Lord.
They are presenting lethal violence as the final, absolute, unavoidable form of masculinity and leadership.
The ultimate test.
They are telling him that to be the ultimate protector, to fulfill his cosmic destiny, he must cross his ultimate moral line. He must take a life to save millions.
So what does this all mean? Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Isn't it wildly naive to admire Aang's moral purity in a brutal, war-torn world?
A lot of people argue that, yes.
We can sit back and applaud his refusal to kill, but when millions of lives are literally depending on him stopping a genocide, isn't his refusal to harden up and do what needs to be done just a massive liability? Isn't it just childish stubbornness?
That is the exact agonizing tension the creators want the audience to grapple with, and it is a completely valid criticism of pacifism in the face of annihilation. But the genius of Aang's arc, and why it isn't just childish naivety, is the mechanism behind his refusal.
Okay, break that down.
He says no to killing the Fire Lord, not out of cowardice, and not because he is afraid of the blood on it. He says no out of profound, unyielding moral conviction.
Which takes incredible willpower.
It takes significantly more internal strength to hold back absolute power than it does to unleash it.
He refuses the binary choice.
Exactly.
The world says kill or be killed. Aang searches desperately for a third option, and he finds it through energy bending.
And we have to look at how this actually works, because it isn't just a convenient magic trick to get him out of a moral dilemma.
Right, it's not a cheap out.
The mechanics of energy bending are crucial to understanding the thematic triumph of the finale. It is a power that completely bypasses the binary of physical violence.
It's a spiritual battle.
Yes, it allows Aang to permanently remove his enemy's ability to do harm, completely stripping away their firebending without actually taking their life.
But the key detail is the risk involved, right?
Exact. To perform it, a Yang's own spirit must be completely unbendable.
Unbendable.
If he harbors doubt, or if his own morality is corrupted, the enemy's energy will consume and destroy.
He is only able to execute this third option because he spent 3 entire seasons refusing to compromise his core belief in the sanctity of life.
His softness, his unyielding commitment to his own morals, is the very thing that makes his...
It is the ultimate rejection of what society considers necessary in a conflict. Aang wins the 100-year war by fiercely protecting his own inner child in a world that desperately wanted to forge him into a hardened executioner.
Which is such a powerful message.
It is.
Yeah.
In a narrative completely consumed by the horrors of global war, refusing to become a killer is presented as the most radical, powerful act imaginable.
And it perfectly mirrors the core message the show ultimately offers to the audience about the nature of freedom and identity.
How everything ties together.
When we tie the arcs Zuko, Iroh, Sokka, and Aang together, we see 4 wildly different characters navigating completely different circumstances, but all fighting the exact same underlying battle.
The grand architecture of the narrative is really built on the rejection of damaging binaries.
Oh, absolutely.
The world of this show tried to force a group of kids into pre-written scripts. It told Aang he had to be a ruthless killer to be a savior.
It told Zuko he had to be a cruel conqueror to earn love.
It told Sokka he had to be an unfeeling, hyper-aggressive soldier to have value.
It handed them the scripts and expected them to blindly read their lines.
Just hit their marks and play their parts.
But the brilliance of the story is the total rejection of the premise that maturity requires hardening yourself to survive brutality.
Right.
It suggests that true maturity and true strength is having the imagination to step off the script and find a path that is genuinely authentic to you.
It is the triumph of imagination over expectation. The realization that your identity is not a static document handed to you by your ancestors, your abusers, or society at large.
It is an active daily choice.
And the moment you stop believing that a third way exists, the moment you accept the rigid binary choices presented to you as the only possible reality, you have already lost the fight.
You've given up your agency.
Exactly. For you, the listener, navigating the real world, the pressure to conform to these inherited scripts can feel completely suffocating.
Really?
The options often seem limited to terrible extremes. You have to be aggressive and cutthroat to succeed, or you will be devoured. You have to bury your emotions to be respected, or you will be cast aside.
But in those moments when the pressure feels infinite and the available choices all require compromising your soul, we have to look back at the radical endurance of these characters.
You have to remember Iroh.
We have to remember Iroh, a man who saw the absolute darkest, most depraved depths of human nature, who lost his own child to the machinery of war, and still actively chose to find a reason to smile.
He told Zuko, in the darkest time, hope is something you give yourself. That is the meaning of inner strength.
Such a beautiful quote.
It really is.
To slip into cynicism, to blindly accept the toxic roles society hands easier than fighting them, is to surrender to your lowest.
Because hope is an active creation, not a passive discovery. We started this deep dive looking at how a supposed early 2000s kids show provided a masterclass on dismantling societal expectations.
It's so much more than a cartoon.
Through the lens of Mazerme, we've explored how this story taught an entire generation about the grueling process of unlearning toxic trait. It redefined ultimate strength, not as dominance, but as utility, profound restraint, and the bravery required to forge a third path when the world screams that there are only two.
It is a remarkable, enduring legacy. And as we conclude, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Let's hear it.
If we spend so much of our finite lives exhausted from performing roles written for us by our past, just like Zuko suffocating in his heavy armor of false honor, or Sokka desperately holding up his flimsy shield of unearned bravado, what parts of your current identity are actually just inherited script? And more importantly, do you have the imagination to rewrite?
Wow. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the source material. Keep questioning the narratives around you, have the courage to search for your third path, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.